This is Gabriel. I'm here to do a deck tech on my Pauper deck. Green-white tokens, or Spore Cry, or whatever you want to call it. Um, Basically, the deck is a bunch of these guys, Essence Warden and Soul Warden. Got 8 of them total in the deck, 4 of each. They're identical. And then a bunch of tokens to gain life off of and use the tokens for Convoke. So we got 8 life gainers. We got 4 major ways of pumping up the creatures, which is the Jildoan Warcry. The first one can often win the game. If you have 10 tokens out and you swing and then hit them for 20, that's game. But when you get 2 of them, it gets really insane. I mean, it's an overrun for 4 mana. So pretty amazing. That's pretty much all we have to pump up creatures' power, but for toughness we have 4 veteran armorer. He's a grizzly bear with a small upside. The reason we want to play stuff like this is because there's a lot of effects in the format that do 1 damage to all creatures or -1/-1 to all creatures, and there's what is probably the worst card against us, or for us, is Echoing Decay, which gives -2/-2 to all creatures. So if you get your creature's toughness up to 3, you're pretty much safe from every single card, every single type of sweeper in the whole format. So we're playing 4 veteran armors. On top of that, we're also playing 4 spider silk armor. This card is amazing. The reach, the giving all your creatures reach, can shut down decks. A lot of decks rely on a few flyers, and they'll just never be able to get through. Against some decks, this is horrible. Honestly, it's just not the card you want versus all decks. But I'd say 75% of decks that you're going to play against, this is quite good, if not your MVP. Alright, to make tokens, we got 4 Colony Garden. It makes a 0/1. Nothing amazing, but we can also bounce it back with Sanctuary. I'm only playing 3 Sanctuaries right now because I was tired of getting hands with 2 Sanctuaries and no other lands, or 2 Sanctuaries and 1 land, but just taking forever to get the deck online because of that. Even 3 is kind of pushing it. But it is really good with Colony Garden. Allows us to run 22 lands in a deck where we want access to mana generally. So it's, pretty good. Getting the extra tokens out of Colony Garden is worth it. On top of that, we have Selenesia Evangel. Tap a token or tap a creature to put a 1/1 token into play. Sprout Swarm, the best token maker ever, maybe. Some decks can't beat this card. It gets to mid-game and they just can't beat it. Not all decks. Most decks can eventually, most decks have answers, but you can easily take over a game with this. Even in 1 turn, you can do it late game. We got 4 Scatter the Seeds, which puts out 3 tokens at once. Instant speed. Between those 3 cards plus the land, you can end up getting quite a few. Alright, so the last bit of the deck is Midnight Guard. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you can untap it. It works really well with Scatter the Seeds, Selenesia Evangel, and amazing with Sprout Swarm. In fact, if you got out all 4 Midnight Guards, Sprout Swarm would be free. You could just get infinite creatures. It also works with Presence of Gond. If you put Presence of Gond on Midnight Guard, it's infinite creatures, which for most decks they can't beat that. And it's very hard to disrupt it if once the enchantment actually resolves, it's very hard to disrupt it. So I'm only playing 2 Presence of Gond because it's truly bad versus some decks. But Midnight Guard's usually pretty good. At the worst, it's 3 mana, 2/3, which is not great, but it's not horrible. 3 toughness is doable. The deck is a swarm deck, so it's just another cog in the machine. Really, it's here for Sprout Swarm and Presence. Reducing the cost of Sprout Swarm can give you 2 or 3 extra creatures in 1 turn. Presence, obviously, infinite combo. Sideboard, we got 4 Squadron Hawks versus control decks. There's a lot of cards this spot in the sideboard could be, but I kind of like having the Squadron Hawks. It's good when it's good to take out Spider Silk Armor and put in that versus some decks. It's just one of those cards that can really, versus some decks, they really can't handle the additional beats. Honestly, though, this position could easily change. I'm not sure what to at the moment. I've had it be different things over time. It's more of a metagame position. Prismatic Strands is better than a Fog. It's pretty amazing. It's good versus Poison, Infect. It's good versus Infect. It's good versus Burn. It's good versus Black, where they have Tendrils and Corrupt. And it's good versus Storm, that not Goblin Storm, but Direct Damage Storm, if that exists. It has a lot of application. It could be main deck even, but I went with Presence of Gone Midnight Guard because it just comes out of nowhere. Moment's Peace is mostly for Infect, but there's some decks you just want it in. So it's a great card. Gleeful Sabotage is better than Naturalized the majority of the time. It's really in here for decks like Affinity, though this deck does pretty well versus Affinity even first game, but this can shut out the game. It's in here for a few other decks too. Decks that play a lot of Oblivion Rings and Journey to Nowheres and stuff. Getting the Conspire on this is really easy. Conspire is when you cast it, you can tap 2 green creatures, and you can Conspire it. Pretty easy for this deck to do. Lastly, we got Thermokarst. It's in here for Cloudpost, obviously. I'm not a huge fan of Thermokarst. It doesn't really meld with the deck too well, but it's one way of slowing down Cloudpost decks. It's very tough against Cloudpost. It's a very tough matchup sometimes, but sometimes you can just destroy them by playing a turn 3 Thermokarst. So it's an iffy card, but at the moment I'm not sure what is better versus Cloudpost decks. So far I've actually done, I'm at least 50-50 versus Cloudpost, but I think that a lot of that's just because they don't know how to deal with this, and I know how to deal with their deck, because this deck isn't seen in tournaments too often and so forth. If you look at my channel, I'll have a few Pauper videos up, and I'll be getting more up as time goes on. I may make slight changes to the deck, most likely to the Squadron Hawk part of the sideboard, but the sideboard's kind of irrelevant because I'm not playing Pauper tournaments very often anyways. I will play in casual or tournament practice room, but in tournament practice room I get tired of playing the same 4 decks over and over and over and over. So I'm going to try to see if I can get a good variety of games up for you guys. If you have any comments, questions, let me know. Give me a thumbs up if you like the deck.